Taking off from an aircraft carrier requires more than just radio communication between a pilot and ground crewmen. It takes the mechanical power of massive catapults and fast-acting braking systems. Aircraft carriers have enough engine power to launch one airplane every 25 seconds. The most important component of an aircraft carrier is the flight deck, or the landing and launching strip. Because the flight deck is so short, pilots and ground officials must keep close watch over all aircraft that are located on the carrier and flying around the ship. U.S. aircraft carriers belonging to the Nimitz class of carriers have a runway that is just over 300 meters long. For comparison, the runway at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York is about 4,400 meters long. In addition, Nimitz aircraft carriers have a flight deck that is about 250 feet wide, and they are capable at traveling at 34 miles per hour. Nimitz aircraft carriers also consist of a hangar deck, island, and power plant. The hangar deck is the area of the ship where stationary planes are kept. Planes are also repaired in the hangar deck, and they are transported to the flight deck by giant elevators. The island, the building where officials regulate the movement of aircraft on and around the ship, is located on top of the hangar deck. Crew members in the island also steer the carrier. The lower decks, on the other hand, contain machinery that powers the carrier. The engine pushes the ship forward with propellers. The hull or main body of a Nimitz aircraft carrier is made of steel that is thick enough to protect the carrier against fire damage. The bottom of the vessel consists of 2 layers of steel to protect the ship against torpedo attacks. For a plane to take off from an aircraft carrier, it must acquire enough lift force to take off from the short flight deck. Some of this lift force is produced by the wind, but must come from onboard machinery. To generate lift, planes are launched by 4 catapults on the ship's flight deck. The catapults are powered by pistons that are housed inside cylinders. Prior to takeoff, the plane's front wheels are attached to the catapult shuttle, or the part of the catapult that sits on the flight deck surface. Once the plane is prepared for takeoff, the catapult cylinders fill with steam. The steam creates a region of high pressure inside the cylinders. Eventually, the pistons unlock and the catapults launch the plane forward. Under the force of these catapults, it takes 3 seconds for planes to accelerate from 0 to 150 miles per hour. Similar to takeoff, landing an aircraft involves the work of several machines aboard the ship, in addition to monitoring by ground crewmen. To land a plane, the pilot flies over the flight deck and attaches a hook on the plane to steer a wire on the ship, called the arresting wire. The arresting wire is attached to a hydraulic system that slows the plane down. It could stop the plane in a distance of 300 feet. There are 4 such wires on the ship, but pilots always try to catch the third because it's safest. Furthermore, because the landing strip is so short, landing a plane requires close communication between the pilot and ship crew. When multiple planes await landing, they fly in an oval formation. One by one, air traffic control gives the plane clearance to land. If a plane is not on target for landing, the landing signal officer, LSO, can use radio or light signals to redirect the plane. The LSO can request that the plane abort a landing attempt. Pilots are also directed to the flight deck by the Fresnel Lens Optical Landing System, FLOLS, FLOLS. FLOLS is a collection of lenses that produces light beams at different angles. The different light beams inform the pilot about his or her position relative to the aircraft. In particular, if the pilot sees an amber light in line with a series of green lights, then the plane is correctly aligned with the runway. However, if the amber light appears to be out of line with the other lights, then the plane is misaligned with the runway. If the plane doesn't catch one of the arresting wires upon landing, then the plane takes off again from the ship. As a safeguard, when the plane lands, it immediately turns its engine to full power. Landing on a flight deck is one of the most difficult things a Navy pilot will ever do. The flight deck only has about 500 feet of runway space for landing planes, which isn't nearly enough for the heavy high-speed jets on U.S. carriers. To land on the flight deck, each plane needs a tailhook, which is exactly what it sounds like, an extended hook attached to the plane's tail. The pilot's goal is to snag the tailhook on one of 4 arresting wires, sturdy cables woven from high-tensile steel wire. The arresting wires are stretched across the deck and are attached on both ends to hydraulic cylinders below deck. If the tailhook snags an arresting wire, it pulls the wire out and the hydraulic cylinder system absorbs the energy to bring the plane to a stop. The arresting wire system can stop a 54,000-pound aircraft traveling 150 miles per hour in only 2 seconds in a 315-foot landing area. There are 4 parallel arresting wires, spaced about 50 feet apart, to expand the target area for the pilot. Pilots are aiming for the 3rd wire, as it's the safest and most effective target. They never shoot for the 1st wire because it's dangerously close to the edge of deck. If they come in too low on the 1st wire, they could easily crash into the stern of the ship. It's acceptable to snag the 2nd or 4th wire, but for a pilot to move up through the ranks, he or she has to be able to catch the 3rd wire consistently. To pull off this incredible trick, the pilot needs to approach the deck at exactly the right angle. The landing procedure starts with the various returning planes stack up in a huge oval flying pattern near the carrier. The Carrier Air Traffic Control Center below deck decides the landing order of the waiting planes based on their various fuel levels. A plane that's about to run out of fuel comes down before one that can keep flying for a while. When it's time for a plane to land, the pilot breaks free of this landing pattern and heads towards the stern of the ship. Landing signal officers, LSOs, help guide the plane in through radio communication, as well as a collection of lights on the deck. If the plane is off course, the LSOs can use radio command or illuminate other lights to correct him or her or wave him off, send him around for another attempt. The pilot will see different lights depending on the plane's angle of approach. If the plane is right on target, the pilot will see an amber light dubbed the meatball, in line with a row of green lights. If the amber light appears above the green lights, the plane is coming in too high. If the amber light appears below the green lights, the plane is coming in too low. If the plane is coming in way too low, the pilot will see red lights. As soon as the plane hits the deck, the pilot will push the engines to full power instead of slowing down to bring the plane to a stop. This may seem counterintuitive, but if the tailhook doesn't catch any of the arresting wires, the plane needs to be moving fast enough to take off again and come around for another pass. The landing runway is tilted at a 14-degree angle to the rest of the ship, so bolters like this could take off from the side of the ship instead of plowing into the planes on the other side of the deck. As soon as an aircraft lands, it's pulled out of the landing strip and chained down on the side of the flight deck. Inactive aircraft are always tightly secured to keep them from sliding around as the deck rocks back and forth. Flight deck personnel also face the risk of a jet engine blowing them overboard. Safety nets around the side of the flight deck offer some protection, but for extra safety, personnel are also equipped with float coats, self-inflating jackets with flashing distress lights activated by contact with water. Flight deck personnel also wear heavy-duty helmets called cranials, which protect their head and their hearing. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.